on, Lukutei Moharan, Rabbi Nachman explains that a person has 7 orifices on his body, on his face, right? The mouth, the nostrils, the ears, the eyes, all these things connect heavily to your soul. And he says that the person wants to have, it's in Hebrew it's called Mohin de Gadlut. Mohin de Gadlut is where he has elevated consciousness, where a person has, as they say, a big head versus Mohin de Katnut, which is a small head, which is a lack of consciousness or a lower consciousness, which means that a person has awareness and he has emunah and he remembers the teachings he learned and he feels good emotionally and he is able to handle stressful situations and he takes his tragedy as a kapara and he takes a tragedy and he motivates himself more because of it. As opposed, that's mohin de gadlut. That's where a person has elevated consciousness. As opposed to a person has mohin de katnut, where a person is thinking with a small head. He can't handle the stress. He's saying, "Why me?" He's saying, "What did I do wrong? Why is this happening to me?" And he's questioning everything. He's getting upset at everything, and he's not realizing that there's something bigger and better going on for him. He's just kicking around and crying like a child, asking, saying, "Hashem, why did you do this to me?" Why did you do this to me when really HaKadosh Baruch Hu is really setting you up and doing the best thing for you that He could be doing. So therefore, we want to be in Mohin de Gadlut as much as we can, and we want to avoid falling into Mohin de Katnut, the lower consciousness. And he says that a person who wants to be in Mohin de Gadlut, in a higher consciousness, he has to guard his 7 orifices on his face and be able to gauge and to filter out what he intakes to his neshama through his body, through his eyes, through his ears, through his nose, through his mouth, and he has to uplift all of them for good. For example, a person has to watch what he eats, a person has to watch what he says, a person has to make sure not to speak lies, a person has to make sure not to speak bad goyi, a person has to make sure to speak good about other people and not to speak bad about Hashem and about other people. A person has to make sure to use his mouth for Divrei Torah and Tefillah and Hitbodedut and all these positive things, and it's going to help you that much longer in Mohin de Gadlut. Or the nose, right? We know the nose obviously smelling things that are not permitted, right? For example, smelling the perfume of a lady that's not your wife, or smelling, benefiting from avodah zarah through smell, let's say, or that the nose in Chazal is related to Yirat Shamayim, is related to fear of heaven, right? We know Mashiach is going to go and realize who is who by smelling them, the Chazal say, by his nose, which means that when a person feels something's wrong in a situation, what do they say? They say he doesn't smell right? So you see from the smell, a person can know if something's crooked or if something is righteous, right? So therefore, he says a person has to make sure to guard what he smells, meaning to have fear of Hashem. Also, his ears, the person has to make sure what he listens to. People a lot of times listen to non-Jewish music, and they have to know that Elisha ben Avoy went off the derech because he used to listen to Greek music at the time. A person has to make sure not to listen to slander, to lashon hara. A person has to make sure to not listen to heresy, not listen to people putting down rabbis or the Torah. He has to listen to the positive things, listen to Divrei Torah, listen to heretical beliefs and things that go against the Torah. A person has to guard his eyes, he has to what he sees, and so on and so forth. We're going to talk about the brit next time. A person has to guard the brit also. That helps a lot for Mechin de Gadlut. But the point is that the biggest distance, the farthest distance between two things in the world, the sages explained to us, is the mind, is the brain, and the heart. A lot of times you can have a major disconnect. And when does the person fall into anxiety, and fall into stress, and fall into depression, and fall into not being his full self? Is when there's a disconnect between the mind and the heart. When you don't have your teachings reminding you, and you don't have your emunah, and you don't have your learning connect to your heart, and it's all emotional, you get all whack, and you lose your mohin, you lose your consciousness, you end up acting like back to an animal. The reason why animals, their head is the same as their body, is to show that they're all on the level of their body. Their head is not above, in charge. But a human, his head is the highest thing, to represent that we have to have our mind over matter. We have to constantly have all of our organs and all of our rest of our body connected to the mind. The mind is the king. So therefore, a person has to always make sure that his heart and his mind are connected, and he does this by guarding what comes into his neshama, the windows of the soul, and because that's what causes most of the time the disconnect. All these things that we consume that are forbidden or they're against the Torah, they cause that bridge to be closed between the heart and the mind. When a person connects the heart and the mind, especially by learning, by praying, by eating the right things, it will make it sure that this channel is open, and then he will constantly be mohin de galut. You know those days you wake up and you're motivated, you're on fire, and you say, I'm going to go pray, and I'm going to go learn, and I'm going to go do the right thing. Mohin de galut. We want to be in that constantly. Well, why do you one day wake up, I don't feel like it, I don't want to, I'm lazy, this is boring, I don't connect? It's because we didn't guard our eyes, mouth, ears, nose, and then it affected our soul, and we lost the